Hello, and welcome to the seventh episode of Maven Capital Partners podcast Invested. My name is Laura Boyd, and I'm an entertainment reporter and TV presenter who's used to interviewing some of the biggest names in the showbiz world. But this podcast is a little bit different. Here I am interviewing the stars of the business world, the CEOs, the business leaders behind some of the UK's fastest growing companies. Of course, we'll hear about the businesses, but I more want to know about the people behind them. What drives these people to get to where they are today, the highs and lows of their career, and their advice for those looking to start to do the same. Today, I'm talking to Tom Eggleston. He is the co-founder and CEO of ProofID, which is a market leader in identity and access management solutions and a global technology player in identity-based cybersecurity with international recognition. I mean, what a title and what a guy. It is a fascinating watch and listen about his journey from university when he wasn't sure what he really wanted to do to getting into business to taking a giant leap of faith and leaving a very well-paid job to go and start from scratch. We hear about how it's paid off and where he's at now, and also about how he switches off and how he likes to rock out to chill out. It is really, really brilliant. He's a great guy, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this. So sit back, relax, and listen to the latest episode of Invested. Tom, thank you so much for joining me. First of all, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. Pleased to be here.
And you've got a great story to share that I'm sure is going to inspire a lot of people. So as you'll know, in this podcast, we hear about people's journeys, how they got to where they are, the highs and lows of their career so far, and a little bit of their advice. But we also like to get to know the people behind the businesses. So first of all, I'm going to start with asking you, how do you start off your day?
How do I start off my day? Well, pretty early usually. Pretty solid routine. I get up about 6:30 in the morning, make the coffees. That's my job. Sort out breakfast for myself and the kids. I try and do the school run with my daughter every morning. That's kind of important. So we do that. That takes me about 20 minutes each way. She has control of Spotify, and that's how we do that. So I'm all up to speed with young people's music, and then into the office from there. But that's pretty much the routine.
And you find that kind of sets you up for the day, having that bit of family time in the morning, because actually quite a few of the kind of people that we've spoken to on the podcast, that seems to be what they do. You know, they get up and that's kind of their time, and it's very important to have that family time before they start the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it is important because part of the job is you're kind of always on, even if you're not, you are. It's always kind of going round in your head. And I think it is important to have that time where you can just set for the day. And honestly, time in the car in the morning is important as well. You know, that sort of, 15, 20 minutes where you can just, think about things by not thinking about things in a funny way. You just kind of let things settle and then, off and start another day.
And have you become a Taylor Swift fan or something now? Is this what we're...
No, that is very much not my daughter's style. She's more into hard rock and metal and all that kind of stuff. So, but I'm kind of enjoying it again. Getting to see music through, she's 13, so through, a young kid's eyes again. And, it's kind of, you can see it's exciting for her, and I enjoy that. I love music because it's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bit much like, do we have to listen to that one? But generally, it's good fun.
It's always nice when they're getting into something that you quite like as well. I think it's a good start. And so take me back then, Tom, to when you were a little boy. Tell me a bit about you growing up and what you were into and what school was like for you.
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up. I was actually born in the Netherlands. My mother is Dutch, and my parents got together over there. My dad's English, so me and my brothers and sisters were born over there. But we moved back to the UK when I was a baby. So my Dutch is pretty non-existent, really. I can understand a bit when people are speaking. I can sort of read it a bit, but there was that kind of influence certainly as I was growing up. But grew up in the south of England. in Surrey. I had a pretty sort of, standard kind of upbringing, really. Great family, and very supportive family. Dog, all that kind of stuff. There's nothing really, really, unusual about it, but that was great in a way. And a lot of support to go and do what we did. School was fine. I did all right at school. I quite enjoyed it, really. I don't know whether that's a normal thing to say, but I quite enjoyed school. I say that to my kids now. It's like, school's great. And they're like, not sure about that. But no, I quite enjoyed it. And yeah, and never really thought too much about it. I just kind of, just went through the process, came out the other end, and went off to university. Probably looking back, I probably should have thought a bit more about what I was doing and what I wanted to do with my life and all of that, but it never really occurred to me at the time.
So you didn't have a goal, because some of the people I've spoken to, knew from a young age they were very into computers or, very into kind of maths and economics and things, but that wasn't,
No,
you didn't have that idea going through.
No, very much the opposite, really. I think, I did fine at school, but was just kind of bumbling along, really. University was a bit different. I had a great time at university, but really messed it up. And I think that was when, it really became clear that, you do actually need to think about what you want to do and why you're doing things. Going to university because I was going to university turned out not to be a good enough reason. Didn't particularly think about the course I was doing. And, I did all right in the end, got a 2-2, but it was a bit of a roundabout journey to get there. And I think in retrospect, I might have done things a bit differently. I might have thought about what I wanted to do and why I was doing it, rather than just doing sort of what was expected. Certainly what I say to my kids now is, really think about what the next step is, because there's loads of different ways of getting to where you're going. There's no one set path. But I wouldn't necessarily change it because it's worked out fine, and part of that process and that journey of sort of discovering that actually I might not have got this quite right. And, you have choices at that point. You either give up or you sort of knuckle down and, get on with it and try and do the best you can, which is ultimately what I did. Those experiences are kind of formative, really. You carry that through to the rest of your life.
You learned from them. What was it you studied at university, and where did you go?
I went to Leeds and did economics. I had a pretty brilliant time. That might have been the problem.
Did you have too brilliant a time? Was that the problem?
I did have too brilliant a time. That is definitely true. But also, the course didn't really grab me. And actually, I hadn't thought it through. I did economics A level. It turned out that the university, the first year was basically just a repeat of what you did at A level. And I kind of switched off as part of that. Again, hadn't really thought, well, why are you doing economics? What do you actually really want to do with your life? Where is this taking you? And it never really at the time occurred to me to think about those things. I just, carried on with what I was doing. So it turned out all right in the end, but it was probably harder than it should have been.
I think there's something in possibly, like, when I was at school, certainly university was really drummed into you. That was the goal. And it almost didn't matter for a lot of us what course it was we were doing. It was just we had to get into uni. And I think at 16, 17, you're so young to kind of try and decide on that path, aren't you? I think there is something actually for taking a year or so out and having that time to actually decide what you want to focus on. Because I changed course because I just went into it completely kind of blindfolded, and then realised what I wanted to do a bit later on.
Yeah, and I mean, my son is 16. He's just finished his GCSEs, and now he's having to make choices. And you really realise that the way that the education system works, right? You're going to funnel now from 11 subjects to 3. Mm-hmm. So you already have to have some kind of an idea of what you want to do with your life. And he's a bit like me. I don't know, but we see. Honestly, there's no given that university is the right path. We have apprentices come into our business, and That can work absolutely brilliantly. If you have an idea, if you know what you want to do and you want to go to work, that can be a equally valid route. And you see some kids, they come and do an apprentice, and they'll leave university, and they'll be on a really after 4 years when their friends are leaving university, they'll be on a really good salary. They'll have a skill behind them that's going to take them through a career, and their mates coming out of uni have got loads of debt and haven't really worked out what it means to do a day's work. So there's loads of different paths, and it's definitely, I think it's changed my view as to what is the right thing for my kids as they steps.
No, I'm completely the same. I wouldn't change my time at university for anything, and I loved it, and it is a great place to be. But I've hosted the apprenticeship awards in Scotland, and it was a total eye opener as to the careers people had gone on to from doing apprenticeships. And yeah, it was another route I had never realised would be an opportunity. So it is a great thing. So tell me a bit about then how you got into business. What was your first role straight from uni?
Straight from uni, I worked in IT support at Halifax Bank up in Leeds. So I stayed on after uni, and just really that was just a continuation of what we were doing before. But it was my first exposure to IT broadly, and kind of realised I quite enjoyed that. And that sort of set me off down a technical path. I went from there to Institute of Cancer Research in London with a technical role again. And did that for 6 or 7 years. I had a short period in the middle of that where I went off to work for the UN in Geneva, again in a technical role, which was kind of quite an interesting
I can imagine
thing to do. And then went back to my old job where I stayed for another few years. But it was very much a techie at that point. My view was I'm gonna go down the technical path. I'm gonna be a technical specialist. And then around 2004, I got a job offer for a job up in Manchester, and that was with the company that was providing technical support to the Institute of Cancer Research where I was working. So I was a customer of theirs, and they asked me to come up, and they were building out a professional services practice to come and be one of the first consultants in their team. There was a bit of a leap of faith, really, at that point, but it was, end of my 20s, time ready to kind of leave London. It was very hard to put down any roots in London at that time because of, the price, cost of living and everything. So it seemed like a great opportunity. So then my girlfriend, my wife, as she is now, moved up with me and came to Manchester. She was from Manchester originally. So, it was kind of, that worked quite well. And we've been here ever since. And I started working for that company, which is called Salford Software. They started getting into identity management, which is obviously what ProofID does. That was my first exposure to that. And I realized probably within the first couple of years that I was good technically, but I was never going to be great. There's some really, really great technical colleagues, some of whom are still actually with ProofID to this day, who I met there, and it's like, I'm not going to be at that standard. But I was pretty good at the sort of the management side of it. So I ended up going into project management. I started the delivery, or the PMO function there, and worked my way up through the business. Ended up ultimately being the CTO of that organization before we left to start up ProofID. So yeah, I don't know if it's a kind of a normal sort of journey, but it's definitely more technically biased rather than sort of sales or commercial.
Mm-hmm. Where was that, and how difficult was that moment when you thought, I've taken the tech side as far as I can go? As you say, you realised that you were good at it, but you weren't amazing at it, and then you kind of diversified. Was that a difficult decision, or did it just feel right?
It just felt right, and I sort of worked with the company to create that role. I was the first project manager they'd had, and sort of kind of pushed to make it happen, and it did feel right, and actually being a good project manager in tech, it's really good to come from a tech background and have that ability to sort of understand what is going on at a technical level without necessarily being able to do that. And that is actually a skill that's still important to me in this role now, is running a tech business, having that that ability to live a little bit in both worlds is quite important. So that felt fine. It felt good. It was, it was clear that it was the right thing to do, and it gave me an opportunity to, I suppose, build something. It was the first time I'd really, built something from scratch.
Yeah. I think that is a very important thing as well, is having an understanding of different parts of the business can make such a massive difference. I find that in my industry as well, knowing a little bit about the people that you're working with and what they're doing can totally feed into making you better in your role as well.
Yep. And I totally agree with that. Having exposure to that, whether it's doing it or just being near people who are doing different parts of the world. It's one of that I worry a little bit about, with the move to remote working, that, particularly people starting out their careers now, there's much less opportunity to do that. I think, when you're not surrounded by people, you don't hear what's going on, maybe what the salespeople are saying, how they're going about their business, or, what the PMs are doing, or whatever it may be. You become very focused on, well, this is what I'm doing, this is my entry, and that's a challenge we're going to have to face, really, because it's massively important in building, well-rounded future leaders, is to know more than just the thing that you specialize in.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. And then if you move on to take the steps into your own business, so tell me a bit about how this came about.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit out of character, to be honest, because I don't think I ever imagined that I would be doing this. And to some extent, it became a little bit born out of frustration. Now, I'd worked my way up through the ranks at Salford Software. And over at one point, they changed the leadership and a different CEO came in. And I just, he had a strategy and he tried to make it work. I just knew it wasn't right. And it was all about diversification. We ended up getting into, rather than being specializing on what we were really good at, it was, well, we'll do a bit of this and we'll do a bit of that. And slowly the company was losing its reputation for being the best in the business or being particularly good at anything. And, worked really hard to try and, streamline that strategy and, get them to change course, but it just wasn't happening. And it was so frustrating because I'd been in the business long enough. Like you said, I'd been around the different roles in the business. I felt like I knew exactly what needed to be done to change, modernize, and take the business into the future. After a fairly long period of trying to make that work within my role as CTO, reaching the conclusion this is not going to happen. It was like, right, well, okay, then do this ourselves. Why not? And it was having that very clear vision of exactly what needed to be done and how to do it that ultimately gave me the confidence to put together the team, and for us to take that step of actually walking out of a well-paid job to nothing. Still remember the feeling of that last time walking out the office and walking through the car park back to my car thinking, what the hell have I done?
Was it like that? I mean, it sounds terrifying.
A little bit. I mean, it's like, and it was like, but I think that's part of it. It's like, well, it's done now, right? So, okay, you can drive yourself mad thinking about doing things. So, it was, just you've done it now, right? You got to go make it. You got to go make it work.
Did you always have that inner drive, though? Do you think, or was that born out purely out of the frustration, or do you think when you look back at a younger you, could you see that you had that in you?
I think I did actually. I mean, certain things like just pushing to change my role to become the PM and to build that PMO function. That was an indication earlier in the career. I can think back to moments where. It was one time at the institute when my boss went off because he had a bereavement. He was going to be off for like a month or two. And I just remember just stepping forwards into that and just taking charge of the situation and, speaking to his boss and saying, I've got this covered, and, sort of leaning in to challenges and that. And I think I've always kind of had that. And I think that is one of the differentiators if you're kind of going to get ahead, is being prepared to go out of your comfort zone and make something happen or take something on or go and build something or do it. So maybe without realizing it, I think it always has been there.
Yeah.
but never kind of expressed in the form of starting my own business until a little bit later.
And how was that then? Taking that leap, was it straightforward? Were you lucky that it was straightforward, or how was it kind of starting off from scratch, I guess, and building it?
It was hard. It was great fun, but it was hard. There were four of us, and I just remember, I've got these crappy offices in the Northern Quarter in Manchester, and just sitting there. It's like, right, we've got desks, we've got computers, we've got phones, got no customers. What next? That's a weird feeling, but you just got to really work it really, really hard. And, we basically hit the road. There's three colleagues and myself doing it, one of whom was my colleague Lorraine, who was running sales for us, and she was brilliant. She had so much energy that she was able to throw into that. We're going to get our first business, and we basically just got on the road and went to see everyone we knew until it started to work. And it kind of went from there. I mean, I remember our first order, £14,000, for 15 days of consultancy, which doesn't seem like much now, but at the time that was like everything that'll keep us going for another month, and it was the first time someone put some trust in us. We trust you guys to come and do this for us, and that was great. So when we were starting to get some real momentum about 6 months in. Slightly odd part of our story is after about 6 months, we actually approached the owners of Salford Software, which was the University of Salford, and essentially made an offer to acquire the business from them. And they agreed ultimately to sell it to us. We bought that business for £1. The university lent us £750,000 to actually turn the business around, because it was loss making at that point. And we were able to really take, all that energy that we built in our startup and bring it back to this more mature business. But, with this kind of new way of thinking about the business, we would take all of those services back to their customers, and ultimately that enabled us to get some scale pretty quickly, which was really, really important. I think we still would have made it. We still would have got to, somewhere approaching where we are today. But that deal, being able to get that deal done when we did, really, it solidified everything and really accelerated.
And when you take that risk, and it must be so difficult, especially with a family, and you've moved everything to Manchester and things, as you say. When you take that risk and that leap, and you do start to get things paying off, the orders coming in, what is that feeling like?
To the extent that you ever have time to stop and think about it, it's really great. And those early ones, I do remember those early deals, and it was just great. It was this kind of vindication on one level, but more than that, honestly, this belief, right, we can keep doing this for another month. We can keep doing this, and the biggest moment is when you stop thinking like that, really. You stop thinking about every deal is just, and actually it's like, well, that means you've actually got something that's sustainable. And, I mean, one of the things is, when I look back, is probably not taking enough time to really step back and think about what I've achieved, and, what we've achieved, and what that means, because every day you're just dealing with the next thing. Every sale, that's great, but it creates a delivery, challenge, and every delivery finishes and it has to become a new sale, and you're constantly, in that world. And it's very easy, I think, to not think about how it feels or what you've achieved, and just get caught up in it, really. But those early deals were really, that was quite something. It just meant it was working.
Yeah. I can imagine. Would your advice for somebody who is, building a startup, or, would you advise them to take that time to reflect and, and to enjoy it, and enjoy the good moments of it?
Yeah, I think it's a balance. I think, you need to be careful not to be too emotional about it. Don't get too high on the highs, don't get too low on the lows, because there will be lows, there will be highs, and your team needs you to be steady throughout all of that. That's kind of what they're looking for you to do as a leader. But absolutely take some time to think about it, to think about, your family as well. You don't do it yourself, your family helps you to do it, and I haven't done that enough, I don't think. And I think it is important to do it, because, you've got to remember why you're doing it. What is it that drives you? What ultimately is it for? And imposter syndrome is a thing, right? That really is a thing, where you say, well, do I really know what I'm doing or whatever? But sometimes you have to take a step back and look at it. Like this business hasn't been created by luck. Sure, there's luck along the way, but you kind of you make your own luck, and then that's not enough. You've actually got to. It doesn't happen by chance.
Yeah. And if you could look back, obviously hugely successful and business is doing really well, but if you could look back, would you change anything in the way you've done anything, or give yourself, younger self, any advice?
It's a difficult one to say, would you change anything? Because we are where we are now, and it's all gone pretty well. So no, I mean, there's I think if I'd given myself advice now, I might not have done the things that we did. Like we made an acquisition in the US when we had, absolutely no money. And probably on paper, that acquisition wouldn't have stacked up if I knew what I knew now. If I brought my sort of rigor that I now have with 10 years of this behind me, knowing what to look for, being a bit more, aware sort of financially, probably wouldn't have done that deal. So no, I don't know that I would necessarily want to sort of stunt some of that enthusiasm and, blind optimism that makes you do things that, well, like you say, it's taking a risk, because you have to. I remember when I was, we were looking to acquire Salford, we had that opportunity, and my brother is, he's in the CFO in the corporate world. And I went to see him and said, listen, I've got the opportunity to buy this thing. And he looked at it and like, don't know about it, because it was losing money. And that's kind of what I mean. It's like, if you take all of this knowledge and you look at it now, you maybe wouldn't take the risks when actually, you're a bit, a bit more naive.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for trusting your gut as well. I think, going with that feeling, and it's obviously paid off for you. Tom, how do you switch off? Because I can imagine, like, running your own business, it must be so high pressured, especially in today's day and age. Again, when we've spoken to loads of people, it's that thing of having the business in the palm of your hand on the phone. And I know it's so hard to switch off. Are you good at that, and how do you do it?
Yeah, it is. I used to really struggle with it a lot more. I do try to switch off of an evening. I'm not one that, because I know that I read my emails at 10:30 before I go to bed, and there's one that I don't like, I'll just be awake all night, and that's not going to do anyone any good. And I'm not sure it actually sets a great example for the rest of the business if that becomes sort of the expectation. So I try and, at a reasonable time, kind of stop. I think it's important to try and have outside interests as well, because otherwise it is literally your entire life.
And you're in a band.
Well, I don't know about in a band. I certainly, we're not a band that's ever played any gigs, but certainly enjoy playing music with old friends from uni and writing songs and doing all that, and that's, I probably no one will ever hear our music, but that's not really the point. The point is having something outside of work that is like the anti-work, right? That
Yeah.
you can do that almost gets you, like sometimes in work, you can get into a flow state, and it's great. It's great to have something outside of work that can do the same thing for you, but is completely unrelated. And I think that's really important, particularly if it's something that you can just do for, I can pick up a guitar and just play for 20 minutes of an evening, and that's enough,
Yeah.
So things like that, I like to go running. Running is another thing. It gives me. I'm out running for 45 minutes. Even if I wanted to, no one could talk to me. I couldn't talk to anyone else. Sometimes I'll think about something very, specifically. Other times I'll think about nothing, but often just that time out just lets things settle a little bit. And I think it's really important to find time for that. Otherwise, I think ultimately you're probably heading to burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that time for yourself. And there's something nice, I think, about the likes of running or locking yourself in a studio or whatever where no one can contact you. You put away your phone and then, your mind's off it for a while. I think is so important. What's the best bit of advice you've ever been given? And what piece of advice would you give to someone looking to get into business?
Oh, the best piece of advice I've ever been. That's a really difficult question. I don't know that I would pick on a particular piece of advice, but the thing that comes to mind when you say that was there was someone who was on our board at Salford Software, who was a CEO of probably a company that was similar to ProofID back then. Actually, it's much bigger now. This was Brendan Mooney, who was CEO at Kainos for a long time. He was not what I imagined a CEO to be like. He wasn't. I was much used to much more alpha kind of. What's the word? Very, very sort of, much more sort of forceful, if you like, maybe more typically salesy kind of approach to being a CEO. And to that point, I probably always thought, well, that's not me. So that doesn't lie in my future. Whereas, actually seeing someone like that operate in a completely different way, someone who's very successful, so you don't have to be like that. There's nothing wrong with being like that, but you don't have to be like that. There's different ways of making this work. Not exactly advice, but it was inspirational in terms of, saying, okay, well, maybe I can give myself permission to think about those things and aspire, because there is a different way to do this job that is more aligned with who I am and the skills that I've got.
That kind of showed you that you could do it, and that has stuck with you. And would that be then your advice for other people then, that maybe they don't necessarily see themselves in that role, but there's something in their mind telling them that they could do it, then perhaps they should just go for it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it's there, like you said, trust your gut, I think is an important part of it. You can do it, it can be done. It won't be easy. It's not meant to be easy. But you can do it, and there's different ways of achieving that. I think what other advice I would give. I mean, another thing I would say is you're not going to do this on your own, right? That maybe in the very first few days you can do it on your own, a bit like myself and Lorraine did. We just got in the car and we drove and we saw people, and that's fine, but that's not going to scale. So, having really good people around you, and finding the right people that, you can do this with, that are going to come on the journey with you, I think is absolutely key as well.
Surround yourself with good people and go for it. And Tom, is life good at the moment? Where's the business going, and how's the future looking?
Yeah, it is good. We're in good shape. We're growing fast. We've expanded really rapidly in our US business. Made another acquisition. So that's 2 acquisitions we made out there now. So we did another one in October last year. And so that's been really exciting. Loads of great opportunity. Been a little tougher, I think, in Europe than the US over the past sort of 12, 18 months. I think that's been generally, we found, that's been a more challenging environment, but it feels a bit like things are starting to settle down a little bit, and, things are starting to improve. So that's really encouraging. So yeah, we're really excited about where we are. We've got a great team, growing fast, and yeah, lots to do. Always lots to do, but no, we're in a good place.
Brilliant. Well, listen, it has been brilliant to chat to you. Finally, we caught up.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. I'm sure that's going to inspire so many people. And I'll let you go and get your guitar out and rock out for a while.
yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you very much indeed. It's been great fun.
Thanks so much, Tom. Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing from Tom as much as I did speaking to him. But just before you go, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our podcast. And if you want to hear more from our inspirational investees, then head over to mavencp.com. I'll see you soon.